It's Virgin Radio, I'm Tim Cocker, and look who I have here.
Hello, mate.
Matt and Dom,
Hi.
Cool.
Muse. And you know what they say, you never get a second chance to make your 8th album. And here we are.
I've heard that saying, yeah. And yeah, it's true, yeah, eight deep. And we're still hanging on for dear life. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and you've done it again. You've collided worlds laced with nostalgia. It sounds like the past and the future.
That's exactly what we're going for.
Yeah,
Yeah. We sort of wanted to escape the present a little bit and not get too political and heavy with the album. We wanted to sort of go back to some of our childhood influences. Because when the band got together in our teenage years, we were like into like rock music and stuff like that was going on in the 90s. But I think actually some of the stuff we listened to in the 80s, like and some of those films as well, I think they probably influenced us as people more than we realised. So this album was a little bit of embrace of that, plus kind of like trying to combine some of our music with sort of more contemporary influences. We worked with people like one song with Timbaland, who's like more of a hip hop R&B type producer. Also with Shellback, who's more like a sort of pop person. So we're sort of reinventing ourselves a little bit and bringing in some new sounds with the band. Yeah.
Which films?
Well, for me, it was like, I guess I probably saw some films that I shouldn't have seen that young. Things like Blade Runner, things like Aliens, The Thing. Obviously family films like Back to the Future and stuff. But what I was particularly harking back to on this album was some of those sort of interesting sort of sci-fi visions that the 80s had of where we should be now. Films like Terminator. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like what they thought the future would be, and then where we actually are.
Well, I'll get to the future in a minute, but the last time I spoke to you, Dom, you described your dog Floyd as having a cone of shame because you just removed a very tender part of his anatomy. So I just thought I'd welfare check. How's Floyd?
Oh, he's great. Yeah, he's great. He's my sister's looking after him at the moment while I'm here doing this, but he's doing well. He's a good boy, He's just a good, well-rounded.
I feel like we just got a glimpse of the relationship with him. He's a good boy. I could hear you talking.
Wishful
to
thinking,
him
I think. Yeah,
well, he hasn't torn up the house or anything. He hasn't like destroyed, chewed through like a couch or shoes or stuff like that. He's just taken a few selections on the carpet.
I beg your pardon.
And now
you can't say that on air, can you? Delete that, please.
Well,
it's rude. It's rude and not.
And now he's fine. So he's great. He's a good chap. I miss him.
Yeah, has he forgiven you though?
For taking his ball out?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. It just took him off. Yeah. He's fine. Maybe that's what's changed him. Because I never thought that by like castrating a dog it really did anything. I thought it was all a bit of a vet's ruse. It's a bit of a ruse. But I feel like it might have changed his personality. He's chill. And he doesn't hump anything anymore.
And thank you for being responsible with the edit on that, Matt. I appreciate that. Welfare check on you.
Yeah.
How are you? Because the last I saw you was a video of you taking a dramatic tumble.
A tumble, yeah. It was more damaging no physical damage, just very embarrassed, basically. But no, I think it was. I basically try and do these knee slides, which I've pulled off quite well in the past. And who would have thought that a long, shiny perspex, thrust wouldn't let you slide? I mean, I took a big run up, went down on my knees, and just literally nothing happened. There was no slide at all. And the upper body just carried on. Did a full. I managed to turn it into some kind of like half-assed move that people at the back of the venue sort of maybe thought was like a sort of foul roll or some kind. Yeah. But everyone up close knew exactly what happened.
I think you styled it out well. And I would love to see like a Fitbit step count on you after a gig, because it's all well and good sitting behind a drum kit, Dom, but that's that.
Well, he probably has to be fitter than me. He's doing all this stuff. Do you know what I mean? He's working his butt off. Yeah, but
sitting down.
But yeah, I'm running around a bit more. That's true.
On that, well, obviously, your bravery on stage, risking tumbles, is not questioned. Do you feel brave as a band, in the sense that I think you take turns and make decisions and try things that I think a lot of people wouldn't have the guts to?
Yeah, I think we've always felt like, I guess, we come from a rural part of England. Do you know what I mean? Devon and stuff. So we've never really felt like we're sort of in a scene of any kind. We felt very sort of outsiders in a way, and I think that made us less worried about taking risks or less worried about trying to fit in or anything, So I think we certainly over the years have just sort of been pretty free with our music and our ideas and our stage presence and everything, without really worrying about whether it's like something for the pop charts or anything. We've never really been that kind of artist.
I remember I had Butterflies and Hurricanes was on in my room. My housemate came in. It was the piano breakdown in the middle, and he just poked his head round the corner and said, "What's this Beethoven shit?" And by the way, nothing wrong at all with Beethoven.
I mean, it's one of the most legendary composers of all time. One of the greatest minds in the human history of evolution, basically. Yeah.
I mean, I told him to stick around and
judge
it in a few minutes' time.
Yeah, that's actually a massive compliment. Like Beethoven. Yeah. I mean, like if we're a version of Beethoven, that's pretty amazing. Sorry, I didn't say that. And then, but yeah, I guess there was bits where we did classical stuff. Whenever anybody goes down that route, it's always like it's not for everyone, is it?
There's not so much of that on this album.
There's a little bit. I mean, the first song, Algorithm, has a bit of classical piano, but kind of, touch, yeah. But yeah.
But over the years, various layers and textures and sounds have been added, and you've embraced the technology, both in the concept and the themes of this record, but also in its execution.
Yeah. I think we're playing the instruments that we learned to play, like guitar, piano for me, drums, obviously, bass and stuff. These instruments are sort of were 20th century type music. Do you know what I mean? Like that's kind of really where it came from. And we were like born into the age of sort of more like programming. Like this is the age of programmers and like laptops and people like programming stuff. So I guess in some ways the instruments that we train to play are kind of obsolete in terms of like what's going on in the pop music world. So for us, it's always been a challenge to try and sort of like find ways to keep that idea of human performance still something that is meaningful for people.
Yeah, let's talk about that in the sense of even without seeing or hearing a note, you could look at the tracks and just what they're called and infer what you're getting at. This, and you mentioned it at the very start. Escape was the word you used.
Right.
Escapism from this world and the technology that's around us.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, this album I'd say is probably more of an embrace of actually, technology in terms of technology,
Yeah.
But yeah, escape from sort of like escaping from the present in terms of like how boring the news can be and how negative everything can seem. In some ways, going into like a virtual reality game, which I did quite a lot of whilst we're making the album, is quite a pleasant. It's quite a pleasant way to escape from the problems of the world, if you know what I mean. Because you go onto like an online game and you meet all these other people in silly avatars and stuff, and you're playing some crazy game together, and everyone's generally very friendly. Do you know what I mean? Like you take humans outside of reality, and they get on very well together and generally very friendly. So I quite enjoyed a bit of that. And that gave me like a little bit of more, let's say, optimism about technology. So that's one of the reasons why on this album we embraced technology a little bit and we immersed ourselves in the visual world of making videos as well, which is something we've never really done before. Whereas the last album was kind of a little bit the opposite of that. It was a little bit like sort of like worried anxiety about the future of AI and things like that. So this album is kind of almost like a reaction to the last album of being a bit more like, well, what if it's going to be great? Maybe it could be great. Yeah.
Well, what's your relationship with social media, for example? Because what you just talked about there, that people will react differently face to face than they would behind an avatar.
Yeah. I think social media puts a bit of distance. I mean, it makes people very close together in terms of texting in a way, or pictures and stuff. But there is an element of distance there where we don't have this. Me and you, like right now, are going to be nice to each other because we're right here. Do you know what I mean? And we see each other and so on. But I think on comments, people can be a bit meaner than their own nature, if you know what I'm saying. I don't think human nature is to be that mean. Sometimes I think human nature is more like we're in a room together. So that's why I love VR. Like VR gaming is when I saw that and I realised actually people, when there's a little element a bit more, even if it's just an avatar and I can hear your voice, it's just people are generally a bit nicer. So I think that there'll come a time in maybe 10 years where we look back on this kind of screen in hand type period as being a bit sort of old hat.
Have you got in a room with Charlie Brooker and kick some ideas around for some episodes of Black Mirror?
I love everything he does, actually. Yeah, Black Mirror is amazing. And I was actually playing, the episode that he did with the Star Trek thing. That was actually my favourite VR game. It's called Star Trek Bridge Crew, and it's a brilliant game. Which I think that episode is actually, I can't remember if the game came first or that TV episode came first, I'm not sure, but it's exactly like that episode. It's a game where you're on the Star Trek bridge and you're like with all these other avatars talking to each other and you sort of have to solve these AI missions, and it's just mind-blowing where the world's going. Yeah.
And I gather you're going to share that interest and passion with that during the live shows that you've got coming up in June.
Yeah, to a degree. We want to try and do something, we're working on doing something quite different to what we've done before. I think like the last tour, as Matt kind of said, it was so reliant on the technology we were using, because we had all these drones flying around and the kind of AI that kind of went into controlling those was quite deep and temperamental as well at times. So we're going to do something different. I think we're going to incorporate like some other people into the show and try and kind of have a bit more humanity in the show and have performers come and like play with us, but also maybe kind of create some kind of live art of some kind in the way that they kind of move or the way they're choreographed, which will effectively kind of create a live visual to the show. So I think, you know, we've done so many years of like, you know, the big screens and just like, you know, pre-rendered content just playing at people that it's, yeah, I think it's time to do something a little bit different. So it's going to be a bit more, I think, you know, immersive in some kind of way, more theatrical, more interesting to look at as well. You know?
I don't know whether it was a rumour that whether you started or someone started because of the Back to the Future references, but quantum levitation. No, in fact, you mentioned the phrase quantum levitation, Dom, when we spoke.
Oh right.
What was that about? There was some rumour about you floating above the stage during live shows.
Wow, our last interview was brilliant.
Well,
quantum levitation.
Yeah,
that's. I think I probably said it'd be cool if we can magnify that so we can levitate around.
Yeah. Was it the whole hoverboard thing? Is that
probably
maybe where you're going with that?
Probably, yeah. I mean,
so what I'm trying to do is
then we don't need a stage
anymore.
Aliens.
You know Ripley, when the big robo-skeleton thing. I mean the big robot thing when she gets in. Yeah. I want to get one of them. Yeah. come out and sing a song in one of those things. That'd be brilliant.
There's a bit of time yet before June, but also outside of the actual gig spectacle itself, there's some VR experiences for fans as well.
Yeah. We started developing this kind of with the videos. We immersed ourselves in making these videos. We've never really done that before. You know, we made it with the same director. So when the album comes out on Friday, there's another 3 videos coming out. There's already been 5 that have come out. And then we're going to make another 2. So by the time we're done, we're going to have like 10 or 11 really cool videos that kind of all link together and all have the same sort of style, aesthetic. And we perceived them as almost being like sort of gaming sort of like VR games or levels. So we actually are going to make a kind of VR game of some kind, which I think will be available to people who come to, not everyone who comes to the show, but there'll be a setup somewhere in the concert where people can put headsets on and sort of you know, play these games based on the videos.
And on the videos, there's a lot of little Easter eggs and references between them. You can only some of them you only see retrospectively, like the Dark Side number plate, for example, at the end. Lots of little things which I think probably the further on we go, the more it's going to.
Yeah, it's the idea. Yeah, the idea is to sort of create these sort of realities within realities within realities. So you don't really know which one is real, you know, and sort of I like that idea basically. You know? So yeah, that's sort of the theme really throughout the album and the videos. Yeah.
Come back to the record in a second, but seeing as you know, nostalgia is where some of the inspiration from this came from. I thought I would you know, let's get a bit nostalgic with you. And I love hearing about the lean times, the early days. And well, for we were just talking about social media. Are you grateful when you look back at yourselves as teenagers that wasn't something you had access to, this permanent digital record of the mischief you two would get up to?
Probably thankful for that, but sometimes you know you look back at it and go, how did we do things, you know, without a mobile phone and the internet, which is bizarre, you know. And I was thinking about it the other day, and I think we were just punctual and actually did what we said we were going to do. You know, these days it's a bit more like, it's a bit flaky.
Meet down the pub at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, and you do it, you know. It can be, I mean, we're all guilty of it, being a bit like, yeah, maybe, yeah, yeah.
I think it's an LA thing. I think
it might be a little
LA flaky thing, yeah.
A little bit flaky, but yeah,
I mean, I don't know. Growing up, yeah, I'm glad we grew up the way we grew up. Yeah, I wouldn't want to change it really.
But there's also, you know, that whole part of your life that you just have to remember. So, you know, it probably would be. It's kind of cool to.
I mean, having said that,
be able to see everything you've done.
It would have been nice to have had more pictures actually of that time. So that in one way, I think that's the good thing about all that stuff is you have all these amazing photos of everything of your life. Do you know what I mean? Like, so there's like before social media and all that kind of stuff, and before I guess everyone had cameras in their pockets. It's like, you know, the whole our life pre-age 20 is basically sort of pretty much not documented.
It's getting there.
It become myth and legend, though, can't it? Yeah.
Right.
It's just Charlie Brooker just predicting the future, isn't it? It's going to be, you know, the one where they've got the things in their eyes and they just like film everything that they do, and he like catches his wife out cheating on him and shows her.
What were those moments as you look back? What were those moments that felt especially significant? A time when you sort of felt like it was a slight out of body experience, and maybe a gig. Or like you maybe
I remember opening up for the Chili Peppers, and that was the first big arena show we did. Was it Paris? Was the first one? I think.
Yeah.
So we were the opening band. It was us, and then it was Foo Fighters. No, that was in America, wasn't it? Foo Fighters, and then Chili Peppers. Either way, it was these big American sort of bands doing big arena shows, and it was our first time playing in front of, say, more than 300 people. You know, and that was exactly what you described. I went on stage and I had that feeling of like, I was so out of my out of body in a way that I actually forgot to play the parts I was playing. And I was like, what? And you look at your fingers and you're going like, why is that not happening? And you realise that you can't zone out too much and look at the crowd. You have to really sort of try and focus on what you're doing. And so that was my first sort of exposure to a big crowd, and that definitely threw me off. Yeah.
I mean, it's a little later, but playing Wembley Stadium for the first time was just like nuts. I guess that was like 11 years ago now.
Wow.
And it was just like thinking back. Fortunately, we filmed it, so we can kind of vaguely remember it. But I just remember it being so surreal after the weekend. Even if we did 2 nights, but the first night, went home, got into bed after doing that show. Not kind of going,
Can you sleep?
not going crazy
that's
because
right, that was the weird bit.
Not going crazy that night because we had a gig the next day, so I didn't want to kind of blow the second gig by losing it. And I just remember being in bed in like my small flat in London, like staring at the ceiling, going, "Did we just play to like 80,000 people? What the hell just happened?"
Yeah, that's true. That was the
It was a real, again, slightly out of body experience once I lay down in bed.
What about the van that you drive around in? Was there a rusty, trusty wagon?
In the early days?
Yeah.
We had one. It got nicked though.
Well, I hope you don't have one now.
Remember the one that got stolen? Yeah.
I think you still owe me 400 quid for that.
Why is it you blame me for something getting stolen? That's the thing. It's like the van was stolen from my house, but it wasn't
stolen by one of your mates.
It wasn't really a mate. No, it was some dodgy geezer that I knew vaguely. But
we were so excited about that van. It was just a Ford Transit, but we were like, oh cool, we're gonna take all the seats out, buy some second-hand aeroplane seats, put them in. Like do it all up, and then it got nicked. And we're like, damn it, that was going to be our. But
we were driving. We were in cars a lot. I had a Volvo. What do you call those Volvos? The one that I had. It wasn't the long one. It was the hatchback version. But we managed to get our gear in the back of a Volvo plus the band. That was amazing. You know what I mean, one small car basically. We somehow got. Nowadays we couldn't even get half of Dom's drum kit into that.
And I'm curious again with the nostalgia and the 80s vibe. You joined Dom's band, effectively. What would you have been wearing at the time? Because I'm trying to think. At that time, it would have been grungy feel would have been a thing.
His hair was down here. He had long hair.
Yeah, I had long hair down to here, but kind of in keeping with some of the aesthetic of the album. I'm pretty sure you were wearing a shell suit.
Yeah, I was not a rock kid at all. I was like into rap and stuff, and I can't remember hip hop music. I think we looked a bit different. I discovered like rock in a way through meeting, becoming friends with Dom. But he was the real deal. He looked like a member of Nirvana. Do you know what I mean? Like he was like grunge. You know what I mean? Like, and he had his grunge gang, and I just thought he was funny looking. And well, no. What it was is he went to. I went to one of their gigs, and there was like a lot of girls and stuff there. So I thought maybe
penny dropped.
Maybe getting in a band is the way to go.
Yes. Well, you mentioned if that was where your inspiration was. So when did the sort of passion ignite for the guitar? And I mean, obviously there's all sorts of instrumentation that you played, but that rock music and guitar.
Yeah, I mean, probably blues was the first thing I got into. So before I was friends with Dom, before I knew him really, I did probably play the guitar a little bit for about 6 months or so before I met him. A year, but I was into like slide guitar, so blues music like Robert Johnson, and my piano playing at that point was more like Ray Charles. So it's very very blues, early rock and roll type stuff, or even earlier like sort of 50s type stuff. And that was probably influenced from my dad, who was in a band, even though his band wasn't bluesy at all, but he was very much into that kind of music, So that was my first exposure really. And then when I met him, discovered sort of these indie bands in the UK like Ned's Atomic Dustbin and like Wedding Present, Senseless Things, and then
were they the cover versions that you'd play?
Some of those bands, yeah.
Have you ever jammed one of those more recently?
No, we haven't actually.
No.
Well,
we probably did Kill Your Television.
Right, maybe. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I want to take a slight whistle-stop tour through the new record, if that's all right with you. So I listened a couple of times and I just scribbled down the first things that came into my head.
Oh, cool.
So I thought I'd share them with you. Okay then, whistle-stop tour of Simulation Theory. Algorithm, straight out the gate. There's drum machine, synth, piano strings. It's classical piano and 8-bit is just what I wrote down.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Pretty amazing little concoction.
Yeah. We liked with a lot of the songs we were trying to combine opposite things together, like mixing genres, mixing eras as well. So that's like, as you said, it's like a very sort of computer game, sort of late 80s, early 90s computer game type sound, and then when the sort of classical piano and orchestra comes on top of that, it's pretty unexpected.
Yeah, a dark, moody way to start an album. Sets the tone nicely. The dark side. I really liked hearing a bit of like vulnerability,
a
bit of angst.
Yeah. You can't go wrong with a bit of angst.
And I think fans that have been with you all the way will really like that
Yeah.
track.
It kind of fits with the theme of the album about the beginning. The first 2 songs of the album is like you're sort of trapped in some kind of virtual the matrix or something, and you're trying to escape out and and overcome the creators, that kind of thing. It's a bit, but for me, it's like that's kind of a metaphor for like saying like being plagued by anxiety or like fears, and then like wanting to get away from them and like trying to get away from the dark side, basically.
Yeah, and then kind of following on nicely from that, I just put Pressure, obviously a song people will be familiar with as one of the ones you released. I just wrote old school Muse in a really beautiful way.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. I suppose it's got a bit of an old school thing to it because it's it's got like the 3 riffs, basically like 3 pretty big riffs in it, and it's pretty rocking. Yeah. I suppose we're wondering what to do with it, so we added all the brass on it, which kind of just again gives it a kind of a slightly different character. But I think once we kind of got that going, and it gave it its own character and face, and then it seemed to fit.
I realise as I'm doing this, I'm risking offending you. It's just a stream of consciousness out of my brain. So Propaganda. I
can't wait to see what you wrote down.
I wrote like Prince.
So with my voice, I don't really have a natural rock voice, like a Brian Johnson or Kurt Cobain type voice, so it's always been a bit weird sort of being in a rock band and trying to find ways for the voice to fix. But what I can do is falsetto, so doing like falsetto songs every now and again works quite well. To me that's like a sort of continuation of Supermassive Black Hole, both Prince influenced in terms of that singing style, Curtis Mayfield maybe, this kind of falsetto voice thing that kind of like funk rock almost, so that's kind of where that kind of I guess comes from.
Break It To Me. Some hip hop, a bit of grunge, but dirty, filthy rock. I was imagining that there'll be some rappers lining up for the instrumental. Can we have that to do something with it?
Totally. It'd be a good one to get some rap on it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I suppose it's got a bit of
Rage Against the Machine is one of our favourite bands.
Yeah.
So.
And there's definitely a bit of just a hip hop feel in the groove, which we were trying to figure out how to do it. So I mean, we've got loads of like kind of world ethnic percussion, like African drums, Japanese taikos and stuff like that, and tribal type sound drums, and built up the rhythm track to give it that kind of slightly hip hop feel to it. Just to kind of, which we thought sounded cool.
Yeah, and it was a weird one for me again, like finding how my voice can fit with that, So I'm not going to rap. I'm not a very good rapper, obviously, but I am singing in a more rhythmic style in the verses.
We don't know that yet.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Could
Album number 9, maybe. I'm going to jump thinking of time as well. I'm going to jump some of the Human and Thought Contagion songs that we've played a lot on Virgin Radio and you've spoken about many times before. Get Up and Fight. It's like a mantra in musical form. It's just what I was interested. You said you do a great falsetto, but it wasn't your backing vocals.
That was actually, I still can't pronounce the name, Tavlo or Tuvalu, yeah. So this song, the original, we worked with Shellback on this one, and what he wanted to move the key of the song into a much higher key, so I was singing like much more like way up there. But the sort of mellow part in the verse that goes, that little bit, that was a little bit too high for me to sing without sort of screaming, basically. So I said to him, like, we should get someone to guest on it, And he's Swedish and she's in Sweden, and so we got Tuvalu on that song, and she's great.
Beautiful. Blockades, echoes of Newborns, certainly that the synth sound.
I suppose that's a bit more.
Were you aware of that as it was happening?
I suppose in the it's a bit more of a kind of old school Muse sound, particularly in the chorus.
Yeah.
Newborns, are kind of a reasonable reference because it's it's like bass distortion on this side, guitars on that side, and the chorus is very kind of like 3-piece heavy in a kind of old school Muse way, I suppose. But I guess just a bit more of a,
it's definitely, for me, that's definitely the most
track.
Throwback song to our early material. Yeah, that song for sure.
And I'm going to stay with you on this one, Dom. Dig Down, because this for me this was a big moment for you on this album.
Dig Down.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
The rhythm section and the drums,
totally,
both live and programmed.
Yeah, totally. It was a good blend. We worked with Mike Elizondo on this one, and he's got the great ear for kind of blending organics and electronic sounds, and yeah, I think we found a good balance again, because the start is obviously all very electronic, and then builds into this huge epic, you know, a little bit of a tiny drum solo, and then builds into this big epic outro, which again kind of gets more organic. And I suppose, you know, we've done often, I mean, we've kind of done similar things before, where the songs kind of start here and then build into this at the end. Algorithm does that, yeah. It's like it's a trait, I suppose, that we've always or often used sometimes. But yeah, that's a good one. It's great live as well.
And the Void, you say this epicness, that ominous sci-fi soundscape. With some classical piano.
Yeah, influenced by sort of early 80s horror, sort of sci-fi horror soundtracks. John Carpenter would be a big influence on that. The actual song itself is a song that was kind of pretty much a classical piano piece that I wrote, and I turned it into a song. But then I didn't want to go down the classical route, so I wanted to make it much more fit in with the kind of theme of the album of being sort of these retro synths and stuff, you know.
I just very briefly before we're done, I just want to mention the big stadium live shows that are happening, but also December the 3rd. You're at the Royal Albert Hall.
Oh yeah, for the Prince's Trust.
Prince's Trust. Yeah. Normally, people have a particular relationship with that, which is why they usually agree to it. So.
The Prince's Trust helped us out when we were teenagers. Yeah. So when we were like 17, we think 17 years old. We're trying to work it out, but the reason why we say 17 is because we remember, you know, we had no money back then at all, and our parents we didn't have any money either, basically. So we were sort of struggling to sort of try and make a living out of music. We were doing our A levels at the time. And we weren't old enough to play in certain clubs and stuff, so we actually got a grant from them for like £300 to buy our first PA system, which we used to go and play in these little sports halls and stuff. So that's kind of really we're thanking them basically for helping us out in those early years by doing this charity show to raise funds for them on December 3rd at Royal Albert Hall. Yeah, that's
a beautiful thing. Well, in a strange way, then I could probably say the Prince's Trust could be responsible for two human beings that might not have been on the earth, because it was. First time I saw you guys was Earl's Court 2004. I think it was just before Christmas.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I remember I was spent by the end of it, and I think that's Stockholm Syndrome. I think was the last tune you played, and I was just. But it was at that night. My girlfriend at the time was absolutely amazing to go to a gig with, and I remember thinking on that night, she's a keeper.
There you go.
Louis and Connie are here, so thank you to the
Prince's
Trust.
Thank
you, Prince's Trust. Nice one. And a very selfish question as well. When you get your costumes made for the new live shows, I sometimes stand there watching you play live, just go, I want that jacket. Just make an extra one in a 42-inch chest.
Okay, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll get you one.
Well, listen, love Simulation Theory.
Oh, thank you very much.
I really appreciate you taking some time with us.
Cool, thanks a lot.
And I hope to see you again when you're back in the UK.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers. Take care.
The best music all day. Virgin Radio.